Morning, new Cricut video today. About 500 years ago, I said I was going to make a new calendar, and I finally got around to doing it. Just in time for the 1st of April. This is not an April Fool's joke. We are legit making this calendar. So first things first, on the iPad and then onto my desktop because it's easier to maneuver things, I planned out the general layout of what I wanted the calendar to look like. A little bit different than the one I'm currently working with. So it's a 2 foot by 3 foot piece of acrylic going in a white frame. And then I decided to put the calendar portion on the left this time, and then the section on the right I divided into a menu and a to-do section. Kind of like a notes section, but work with me. Changing all of the fonts to Sweet Pea. I'm going to ungroup all the letters, zhuzh them together, and then reattach them so that they all cut as one piece. And then I did end up using in the arrange section of the toolbar, I selected all of the different days of the week and anything I needed to kind of spread out evenly. I allowed the computer to do it for me, even though I knew in the end, this is more just so that I could see where things needed to be. And it did end up working out really well in the end because of suggestion from Peter to use my sewing projector to affix everything to the piece of acrylic. Once you have the line thickness that you want for separating all the days of the week and kind of creating your grid pattern, I just did one for vertical, one for horizontal, and then duplicated it the number of times I needed it. So I'm doing a 5 by 7, that way I'll have 5 weeks by 7 days, and that I won't have to kind of slice any of the days in half if it's not like a perfect 4 by 4 week. Now in the menu section, and I'll do the same in the to-do section, I'm creating a slightly smaller square. I'm going to slice them out so I now just have a simple border. You could do this by using the offset option and then just doing it in the negative direction, but I just chose to do it this way. I changed my background to turquoise because that is the color that I have going behind the calendar. And then I'm going to change everything to white and get rid of all of the gray boxes because they were just there for layout, and now that I know where everything's going to be, I don't really need them anymore. Next up for the menu section, I decided to add the days of the week just to keep things a little bit more organized, easier to figure out what's for dinner on each night. And same thing, just ungrouping the letters, I'm going to arrange them with the left margin, and then I'm going to use the computer to distribute them evenly in the space that I have, just so I don't kind of have to guess where they all need to go. I'm going to then highlight them all and attach them together so that it's all going to cut as one thing. And then I decided I wanted to have a spot to write all of the different numbers for the days in the calendar. And I wasn't sure kind of what shape I wanted to use. Did I want to use the little pennant? Do I want to use a circle? I ended up going with a square just because I felt it kind of matched with all of the squares that were going on anyways. And I figured it would just be easier to align everything in the long run. So decided square, and then I needed 35 of them. In the end, I did go through and add all of the different squares and weld them to the horizontal bars so that I wouldn't have 35 squares to place on the calendar. And it worked out. I don't know if I would do that way in the future, but it worked out fine in the end. It still looked pretty good. To finish up the planning of the calendar, I am centering everything that needs to be centered and then attaching the to-do to its box and the menu to its box. And then Peter had the genius idea, like I mentioned earlier, to use my sewing projector to project onto the floor. I ended up having a hard time seeing it when it was projected just onto the floor of the cutting mat, so I taped down some tracing paper because it's white and it's just easier to see. And then I just kept zooming in and making it bigger until it kind of fit the size that I needed it to be on my piece of acrylic. It was not perfect by any means, and it definitely didn't match up exactly to the size I needed it to be, which I wasn't quite thinking when I expanded it. I just kind of put the acrylic down and was like, yeah, that looks pretty good. So I had to kind of fudge things as I went along, as you do, but again, it was fine. So Peter helped. I used his eyes just because sometimes it's nice to have a second pair of eyes to be like, is that centered? Is that kind of, square to what I'm doing? And then having to stick all of the things down in reverse, it was definitely a challenge. I am using a repositionable Cricut vinyl. I wanted to use permanent, didn't have any. I had white repositionable, and you want to know what? I am so glad that I didn't wait and go buy permanent vinyl, because the fact that I could peel this up and reposition it a bunch of times was a lifesaver, like a full-blown lifesaver. You can see there at the bottom I had to kind of zhuzh it a little bit because the box, like the vinyl box that I had to lay down, was slightly larger than the box that was projected. Again, just because I didn't specifically measure it, I just kind of looked at it and was like, yeah, that looks like it's gonna fit. So I had to kind of zhuzh things, and the only portion that didn't come out exactly the way I wanted it to was the menu section. Again, because it's bigger than what was projected, and it was like I should have just done it the same way I did the calendar. Do individual lines and lay those down, even though it would have been a little bit more persnickety to get them like perfectly lined up, because this ended up being slightly off kilter, and I know it's gonna bother me. It just will. I can't help it. I'm a little anal retentive when it comes to things like that. Here I'm just cutting off that last piece because it is a little bit too long, and it was kind of going over the title of the to-do section, which I didn't want to have to peel up. So I just trimmed it down a bit, and it does overlap the S for Saturday on the bottom of the menu. But you want to know what? It's just for us at home. It's nothing fancy. I mean, it's pretty fancy if I do say so myself, but you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be functional, and it has to work for us, and I think it's going to. So we're gonna move on to the large strips now. I did not film all of this because it got very repetitive and very tedious. So first I kind of held it up and was like, oh, it's so much bigger than what I have projected, and I didn't want it to overlap too far onto the menu and the to-do section. So I had to peel it up a bit and kind of scooch it over a little bit closer to the edge of the calendar, and then I just went piece by piece. Once I had this one down, I decided to do a vertical piece so I could know exactly where each one needed to be, and then instead of using the projector and the projected image to exactly lay down the pieces, I more used it just to make sure things were going to be straight, and went and lined everything up with the boxes instead. Home stretch here, folks. We are just throwing on the days of the week, Sunday through Saturday, and that is it. It is almost done. I completed this all in just this evening, so last night from the day you're watching this, if you're watching this the day this goes up. If you like today's video, I would super duper appreciate you hitting subscribe if you haven't already, and giving me a thumbs up, maybe throwing a comment down below, and yeah, that'd be great if you could do that. You don't have to, but I'd appreciate it. Otherwise, stay tuned. I am going to show you the final project, the final look, if you will. Peter helped me get it into the frame. It was definitely a bit of a tight squeeze. And then after we pinned all of it down, I was like, oh, I probably should have wiped it off, because I'm working down here in the basement, and the cats are always in the basement. So yes, there are cat fuzzies on it right now, but I was too excited to show you the finished product. So tomorrow I will probably open it back up before I hang it, before I write everything on it, and wipe off all of the fuzzies. But like, look at it. Come on. And also there's Mo supervising. And here it is in the frame. So I think when I open it up tomorrow, I'm also going to like push down on all of the vinyl because there's obviously little air bubbles from where I didn't push it down all the way. I was just, you know, on a roll. But I think it turned out really stinking awesome. I'm very impressed with myself. Yay. Okay. Well, until next time, friends. Thanks for stopping by.